Boom, boom. We've changed venue once again. For those of you who saw the little lunchtime chat we did, I was in the lobby of the lovely boutique hotel. I have now actually checked in. I'm now in the room. And the Wi-Fi here is fairly shonky. So we will persevere, but I'm aware that the Christmas feature isn't as good as it normally is when I'm in my office. So I can see that. And if you can too, that's just the way it's going to be today. Okay, I'm out and about, and I'm dealing with, facilities that are not my own. So that's the way that goes. Today we're going to do a 10-minute training on interviews. So do say hello to me, please, in the chat box wherever you are. If you're in the UK, let me know whereabouts. If you're abroad, let me know what country you're in. I'd love to say hello to you, and also give you a little name check on the screen. And what's one big thing you want to get out of interview training? If you could have one interview problem solved, what would it be? Let me know, please, in the comments. I'd love to find out. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff about interviews out there, but the one thing I want to tackle today is how you answer their questions. You're going to go for interview, you are going to get asked questions, and there's quite a lot of HR involvement at this stage, and they will ask what's known as competency-based interview questions. And those competency-based interview questions are what I believe to be the ingredients for successful in the post. So those interview questions, if you're might sound a little bit like this. Can you give me an example of where you failed and what you learned from that? Can you give me an example where you've had to handle a resistant stakeholder? Can you tell me about a time when you managed an underperforming subordinate, etc., etc., etc.? These competency-based interview questions, in my humble opinion, are monumentally stupid, but they are a way for all candidates to be interviewed the same. All right, so you can sort of make it homogenous, make it an even process. It doesn't make it a good process, but it does make it even. And therefore, however crap it is, it's fair. So, crappily but fair to everyone. That seems to be a winning move, apparently. The other thing is that it's the wrong way of understanding success, because it's all ingredients based rather than output based. And I've got an enormous problem with this. And those of you who've been on my masterclass interview training, and there's one coming up next week, so you'll be able to go to that. Those of you who've been on my masterclass interview training will understand that looking at the inputs of a job or the ingredients that are necessary. So, what skills you've got, what knowledge you've got, what qualifications you've got, what experience you've got, are the wrong things to look at when you're trying to work out whether someone is successful. What you need to do is look at the outputs of a job. Can you help them grow their revenues? Can you help them reduce their costs? Can you help them mitigate a specific risk of some type? If that's what the job requires, then ask about the output. How to achieve that. If someone can achieve the output, the quality that you want them to achieve it, by definition, they'll have the experience, skills, qualifications, etc. If you just ask about the ingredients and do a tick box exercise, you will hire someone who can tick the boxes, whether or not they can produce the result, which is always a very risky thing to do. So Alina's just confirming that I'm coming through loud and clear. So I'm pleased about that, because I've always got some concerns when I'm on somebody else's Wi-Fi. Amit's in the room. So good afternoon. Looking forward to this 10-minute interview training. You're welcome, Amit. Still in that position. I've got 2 different types of jobs in my CV history. Went from compliance to sales. So we're going to talk a little bit about your answers to your questions in a minute. Chris from North Wales, interested in any tips for those interviews that are not formal traditional interviews? Just come here, have a chat and tour of our facilities types. So I've got Chris about how you can give them what they need, whether they ask for it or not. So you're in the interview, and regardless of whether it's Chris's style, just informational, chat, it's all very informal, doesn't appear to be a lot of structure, or whether it's highly structured, and they're bowling these quite dodgy competency-based interview questions at you, for which there are truckloads of knowledge on the internet about how to answer. The Carl technique, the STAR technique. It's all a load of shit, okay? If you want to know whether someone can do the job, ask them whether they can do the job, okay? And virtually no one does it. So how do you get an answer to that question if you're not asked it? And so let's take one of those competency-based interview questions and let's put it in the context of an actual interview, and let's see how we would go it. And then let's see how you can take that principle and apply it to any question you like. Okay, so let's say I am head of IT infrastructure. So I'm reporting into the chief information officer. So it's the CIO who's going to be my line manager. I've got HR in the room, and they're asking me about a question about how I've handled a resistant stakeholder in the past. Some other line manager who didn't really want to go along with the change I wanted to bring about in the business because it was going to interrupt their world. You know, I am planning some changes to the business. As the head of infrastructure, I'm going to do some upgrades. I'm going to give us more capacity, and that will help reduce our cost. It'll free up the business to process more business and make more money. And really, that's the big deal. When I spoke with the CIO, what's the big challenge facing the business? How's that impacting this role, etc., etc.? What I learned was, and this is all going to come out of the interview masterclass in a week. What I learned was that technologically, we were a brake on the capacity of the business. We were holding the business back because they weren't able to process as much as they'd like to, and that had an impact on revenues. This is fine. This is normal for businesses. Technology can improve capacity. More capacity means more revenue. You know, this is not a complex story. And as the head of infrastructure, one of my jobs is to upgrade the infrastructure to provide more capacity so they can make more money. Happy days. In addition to that, there is a side order of the old infrastructure is a bit creaky and expensive to maintain, and if we can get some swish new infrastructure in, then it'll be cheaper to maintain as well. Great. There's some pros and cons to that. The new infrastructure is going to cost a ton of money. It's going to interrupt lives, including stakeholders who are going to be like, really? You got to run and coach the horses through my business department again? This is all very annoying. So it's not an unreasonable situation to encounter. And as a leader in technology, I might be expected to be able to deal with that. I get all that. But really, what the business wants to know is, how do I achieve the outcomes? And so anyway, I wasn't asked about that. I was asked about the inputs. Can you give me a time when you've had to deal with a resistant stakeholder? Yeah, sure. Shit question, but fine. And so what I would be tempted to do is this. Before you give them the war story about how you've done that well, which I'm sure you've all got one, all right? The resistant stakeholder story, the failure story, the, you know, blah, blah, blah. So we've all been there, done that, worn the t-shirt. We've got these stories. That's fine. Before you give that answer, give them two pieces of information which they did not ask for, but absolutely do want, okay? And this is the outputs of the job, all right? So before you give them an input answer, give them the outputs of the job first, okay? And you can frame it within the context of the input answer, the war story about your resistant stakeholder. So, Johnny, as a potential head of IT infrastructure, reporting to the CIO and helping to increase capacity in the business so that we can make more money, which probably isn't going to be said in the interview, but that's the context of this question, right? That's why we're here today. Can you tell me about a time when you had a resistant stakeholder? Yes, absolutely, says I, trying not to roll my eyes and stifle a snort of derision about how crap that question is. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, at my last job, where we had to increase capacity in operations and sales processing significantly to enable the 20% year-on-year revenue growth that we got, which at that firm was, you know, tens of millions of pounds, we had to interrupt the business quite a bit, and one or more of those stakeholders absolutely were quite resistant. And the way I handled it was, and then you bang in your war story. Well, what they've tacked onto the front there is the benefit, or the purpose in my language, of doing what you did, and the quantity of that benefit. The benefit being revenue and the quantity being tens of millions. So as someone who is a potential candidate, I can help you achieve your goals, whether you ask me about those or not, because you've asked me an input question about how I would do it, the processes. But really what you're looking at is the purpose and the performance. You know, what's in it for you and how much is in it for you, the why and the how much. Yeah. But what you've asked me is a how question. I think so. I'll answer it, but I'm going to make sure you hear why and how much. Yeah. The benefit and the quantity of that benefit first. Yeah, absolutely. In my last role, where we had to significantly upgrade our capacity, and as the head of IT infrastructure there, I led that capability, and that freed up our ability to process more business, which actually made us tens of millions of pounds worth of more revenue. We had to interrupt quite a lot of stakeholders, business units, and one of those was quite resistant to us doing that. And so we had to go in, and then you put your war story in, win hearts and minds, explain to them about benefits, get them involved on the change team so they're in control of what's happening to their function rather than being a passive recipient of it. Whatever your war story is about resistant stakeholders, I don't care. All the time, you're answering the question with purpose, performance, why and how much, quantity of benefit, before you answer their how question. All right. So all questions, whether it's informal, Chris, so I've got you there. You're walking around. Any tips for those interviews that are not formal, traditional interviews? Just come in and have a chat and a talk about this type. Yeah, absolutely. But you're going to ask them the questions. What is it you're looking to achieve with the hire of this person that we're interviewing for today? Well, we want to, we would like to have a head of warehouse operations. Great, cool. And what's the head of warehouse operations going to help you achieve? We're going to be able to get through. We're going to get more goods in. Okay, great. And how does that help the business? Well, if we can get more goods in, we can add some value to it and get more goods out. This is actually going to grow our revenues. And is that what you really want the warehouse management team to contribute to? Is that the number one driver? Yeah, pretty much. Well, also, we've got quite a high turnover of staff here, and we'd like to see that go down because it's incredibly disruptive, which also has, and it's quite costly to replace them. Okay, so if we can see the people costs go down and the people become more stable, that and greater productivity in the warehouse, both those two things will have a knock-on effect on revenue. What kind of revenue gains are you hoping for? Oh, we'd like to see an additional, £1 million out of this warehouse facility in the next 18 months. Okay, so someone who can achieve a £1 million revenue gain along with more stable turnover of staff and a reduction in people costs because of that, that's how you know they succeeded in 18 months' time. Yeah, absolutely. So listen, tell me, Chris, tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, so the last operation I worked at, and then you give a story that's related to what it is they want done. The last way, the operational processes in the warehouse were just, a little bit back of the fag packet, and then they need tightening up. So we brought in some structure, some process. That actually had quite a lot of positive effect on the morale of people who then understood what it is they were supposed to be doing. Their colleagues did as well. They could rely on each other. We actually got some teamwork going and reduced a lot of the bickering, which was just a lovely, lovely feeling. And as a result of that, once we had a well-oiled machine on the people front, I could ask them to scale up and be more productive because it was just less hassle. And as a result of that, actually, we're able to free up 750,000 quid's worth of additional revenue by having a higher throughput. We never would have done it without fixing the people problem first. And the people problem actually wasn't a people problem. They're lovely people. They just had really crap processes that they had to manage. Some of them weren't even processes. They were just made to go along because no one had helped them, structure their days and what they were supposed to do. Oh, that's interesting, Chris. Quelle surprise. That's what I'm doing. So there's a bunch of stuff there, but it's always about what does the hiring manager really want? Not input, but output. Revenue, cost, risk, and how much. And if you lead with those two answers before you give them the how answer, which is the question they asked, then you're home free. All right. Always hammer those two in your answers to your questions. Now, what I'm going to be expanding on this massively in a 45-minute long masterclass on interviews. All right, and that masterclass is going to cover everything from the icebreaker at the beginning. What about this weather, eh? And how did your sports team do at the weekend, or whatever the icebreaker is, into the segue question, through a structured interview process where you can benignly give them way more constructive and beneficial content in the interview than they asked for, without it sounding weird, without it sounding like you're not doing what they asked for. All right, and then I'm going to show you how to wrap it up and exit that interview nice and smoothly and get the job offer. And there is a structure to this. There's a process to it. There's a script for it, which you can obviously adapt for each of the jobs and fill in the blank script. And I'm going to do it end to end. It will take us about 45 minutes, and I'm going to do that next week for you. All right. There it is, Thursday, 23rd of March, 3:15. And we're going to cover everything, soup to nuts, the entire interview. We're actually going to do it live with you. And then those people who attend that masterclass, there is a playbook that goes with that. All right. So I've written it all down for you, a big old PDF with all the different elements in it, the why of those elements, so you understand why it is supposed to doing it, what the impact of those is, and where you can be flexible with the scripting and use your own words, where you cannot and why, because I'm bringing a professional copywriting coach to actually create these words. So there's we can just de-risk the entire process for you. Okay, so if you want that, then let us know, please. there's a free interview success masterclass coming your way on the 23rd. And so whether you're in LinkedIn land or Facebook land, there it is. Now, the masterclass for this week, which I'm going to be doing in literally in about 15 minutes time, you tell me that? Yes, I am, is on LinkedIn content. Okay. There is 95% of job seekers do no content whatsoever. And the ones that don't do it very well, and have got fear about what to write, and they've got fear about whether it's going to be engaging. And if it's not, it's embarrassing, and the whole thing's quite a chore. So I'm going to quickly fix that. It's going to take me all of 10 minutes to show you how to always have exactly the right content, how to always get engagement on that content, and how to never have to think about it. All right. So I'm going to show you some structure there, how to actually structure a basic post, literally fill in the blank stuff. Then I'm going to show you ChatGPT-3, which is this AI engine, which I think is super cool. And then for those who that's advanced stuff. And then the mastery, I'm going to bring in an app called Taplio, and I'll show you a little quick walkthrough on Taplio. Taplio is a paid application, but it has a very powerful AI engine on the back of it. It is specifically for LinkedIn. All right. Taplio is not a generic content generator. Taplio is specifically for LinkedIn. It does some very powerful stuff. It is a paid tool. All right. I have no connection with Taplio. I'm just a customer and I love it. But I'm going to take you the basics, then how you can use AI to do it. And both of those things are free. And then I'm going to introduce you to Taplio, which is an advanced thing. Actually, more than advanced, it's mastery. I mean, it's all the very serious content generators on LinkedIn that I know use Taplio. It's just blow your mind away, amazing. So that's coming up in about 15 minutes. Other than that, though, any questions or thoughts or concerns on interviews? What did Amit ask earlier? Went from a compliance officer to a sales manager. I want to apply for other regional sales roles. So I want to know more about how to answer questions on this. Hopefully that answers that question, Amit. When it comes to sales, they're going to ask questions like, can you grow existing client revenues? Can you grow new client revenues? Can you grow existing product revenues? Can you grow new product market revenues? New product revenues, and ditto same with markets. So there's geographies, there's customers, and there's products. There's a little triangle there of different types of revenue, new and existing, in each of those corners. And there's a scale. Do you turn the dial by £1 million, 10 million quid, 100 million quid? What scale do you operate at? So there's a bunch of questions there that they're going to want an answer to. And they're going to ask you questions like, tell me how you go about prospecting. Tell me how you go about clients. Tell me how you go about closing a piece of business. Tell me how you go about reviving old business. All the usual crappy questions that people get. The war stories about that, everybody's got, all right? And it's not the thing they're after anyway. What they really want is the outputs, which is, can you make the revenues in the new or existing areas of product, market, or customer? And if so, by how much? If you keep giving them those two bits of information before you give them the war story how answer, you're home free. Yeah. Alrighty, that's it. Look after yourselves, everyone. I've got a 10-minute break. I'm going to grab some water, and then we're going to do the content masterclass, and next week the interview masterclass. So that's it. Look after yourselves. Take care, and I will see you in about 10 minutes. Bye now.